Now, I want to revisit a pivotal moment here in your career as a researcher and in your life, really, and that's the Terry Wogan interview from 1991. Now, I guess just sort of take us back to that and what was going through your mind when all that went down, because I saw, segments of it, and you looked almost overwhelmed during the whole thing, like there was just so much going on with you that almost, it felt almost like a setup, if you will, like they were taking advantage of someone who, was going through this very turbulent change. But I'm interested in, your take on it all.
Yeah, you make some good points actually there. Yes, a lot of that was exactly what was happening. But again, if you look at it from another point of view, it takes on another meaning. But certainly in my life, what happened in the lead up to that, and it's important to explain the lead up to it. I went to that psychic I mentioned earlier, who told me that I was going to go out on a world stage and reveal great secrets, which at the time, although one level of me thought, yes, this feels right to me, another level of me that's lived in this world, for decades and stuff like that, I was in the 30s at the time, I think, was going, I'm going to do what? What you're talking about. Anyway, after that, I started to go through a series of incredible synchronistic experiences during the year of 1990, after I saw this psychic in March 1990. And it was like, and this has gone on to this day, it was like some unseen force has been handing me pieces in a jigsaw puzzle, virtually in the order I need to have them to most easily understand them. And one of the things that I was told through psychic in that period was no need for arduous searching. It was all you need is to follow the clues. It was all arranged a long time ago. And that's the experience, I have to say, over these 20 years that I've had. And so during that year, I got more and more kind of a grasp on what was happening to me. And I wrote a book called Truth Vibrations, which I finished by the end of 1990, and it went off to the printers. Now, towards the end of 1990, I then had this constant theme in my life and this urging to go to Peru. And I'd be walking down the street, and I'd see an advert for Peru and all the rest of it. And it was just... and by this time, I was starting to understand, having been at it for a year, that this synchronicity of coincidence was actually what I call the language of life. It's life talking to you in the language of synchronicity and coincidence and symbols, etc. So even though I had very little money at the time because I left the BBC and not earned any money for basically best part of a year, I jumped on a plane to Peru. But anyway, long story short, loads and loads of amazing things happened to me. And I ended up in a place called Siyustani, not far from, about an hour's drive from a place called Puno in Peru. And I'd stayed at a hotel in Puno, which was called the Siyustani. They had pictures of this place. It's an Inca ruins site. And so I hired this tourist bus with this tourist guide and stuff that was with me, and we went off. And I went there, and it was a very nice place and beautiful, and I spent about an hour there among the ruins, and it was nice. But when I went back to the bus, I thought, well, what I've just experienced does not match the urging I had to be here. So I was very disappointed, and I got in this bus with little windows on the side, a little mini bus, as we call them in Britain, and we go off back to Puno, but about no more than 3 minutes down the road from Siyustani, in this completely uninhabited area virtually, I looked across to my right and I saw this mound. This is February 1991. And I looked at the mound, and all I could hear in my head when I looked at the mound was, come to me, come to me, come to me. And I thought, crikey, that mound's talking to me. But of course it wasn't a mound. It was just an indication this is significant. So I said to the guy, can you stop the bus? I'm going up that mound. I'll only be a minute. Well, I thought I'd be only a minute, but I was over an hour because of what happened. And I walk up this mound, and I didn't see it from the road, but when I got to the top, there was this standing stone circle, which I've actually seen on the internet while I was writing this book, actually. It's the first time I've seen it since I was there. And I walked into the middle of it, and I'm looking back to Siyustani across the valley and the distant mountains. And then my feet start to burn. Now, I'd had this experience before, at the start of my experience in 1990, but that's another story. And anyway, it starts to burn, and it's like magnets. My feet are like being pulled to the ground. And then I felt like a drill going into the top of my head and down through my body into the earth, and another flow of energy coming the other way and out the top. And then this, not voice, but very strong thought form, which didn't come from me, just went through my mind and said, first of all, they'll be talking about this 100 years from now. And I'm thinking, talking about what? And the second line immediately afterwards was, it will be over when you feel the rain. And I'm standing at that time under a cloudless Peruvian sky with a piercing, very, very hot sun, and it was ridiculous that it will be over when you feel the rain. I thought it could be here a month. And anyway, what happened then is my arms went out at 45 degrees without me deciding to do it. And above my head. And this energy then started to get more and more and more powerful to the point where my body was shaking. And this went on over a period of the best part of an hour where I kept going in and out of, consciousness really in a way. It's the same principle as driving a car and daydreaming and then wondering where the last 2 miles have gone. Your subconscious has been driving the car. I mean, we'd all be dead without the subconscious, of course. Anyway, one of the times when I came back to awareness of the situation I was in, I noticed that over the distant mountains, somewhere away, there was a light grey mist. And as I watched it, this happened really fast. And over quite a short period, it became a dark grey mist, and it was obvious it was pouring with rain over the distant mountains. And over the next little while, and it was, I was only there about an hour, and it's been going for some time by the time this happened. This rainstorm came out of these distant mountains, and as it got closer, it was just a straight line. It was literally like, I've described it many times, like pulling curtains across the sky. It was a straight line. And eventually the sun was covered up, and in the end, I'm watching a wall of stair rod rain coming towards me in like a straight line. It was just an extraordinary experience. I mean, if you wrote it in a novel, they say, well, that's a bit far-fetched, isn't it? But it happened. And eventually, the rain hit me, and at that point, by the time the rain hit me, I mean, my body is just shaking like it's plugged into a nuclear power station. And then when the rain hit me, the energy stopped, and I staggered forward. I could hardly stand because my shoulders that I hadn't felt. My arms had been up at 45 degrees all this time. Yeah. I couldn't felt before was suddenly agony. Anyway, the reason I tell this story is that whatever happened there was the equivalent of having my consciousness or my mind smacked with like an Exocet missile, and it just broke the eggshell. It broke the bubble that I lived in up to that point, the bubble of perception. And suddenly, over the next few days and then weeks, my mind was just flooded with a tidal wave of information, concepts, perceptions. And it was like pressing too many keys on the computer too quickly. The computer says, can't process this, I'm freezing. Yeah. And that's basically what happened to me, Tim. I was processing so much information that basically the computer froze. And that's at that point, synchronistically, I was invited onto the Terry Wogan show, which at that time was the biggest, one of the biggest prime time audience shows in Britain. And the night I was on, I think they got 17 million in a country of just over at that time 50 million. So that's the ratio you're talking about, because it had been all in the papers. This guy Ike's gone crazy. So when I was talking to him, I was still in that state of bewilderment. What's happening to me? And it was funny because while I was talking to him, it was live, of course, and the audience were laughing and ridiculing me and all the rest of it. And after that interview, of course, I was ridiculed wherever I went, mercilessly, constantly, for at least 2 years. Anyway, as I was talking to him, I was aware of two levels. There was the level of David Icke, who had been a television presenter and respected, person in the public eye in Britain, who was dying a death. Oh my God, what have I done? I've destroyed my life. But there was another level of me which I was so aware of while I was doing the interview that was saying, it's going to be fine. It's leading somewhere. Don't worry about it. This is leading somewhere. It's going to be fine. And with the passage of what we call time, it has been. But again, about my journey, the things that happened to us, what happened to me as a result of that interview, like I say, is I went through the most amazing levels of ridicule. I mean, there can be few people in this country, possibly anywhere, who've been through such a concentrated, massive, unmerciless period of mass ridicule. I mean, I couldn't walk down the street. Going into a pub or a bar, forget it. There was uproar, and it was just an incredible experience. I would stop at my car at the traffic lights, and the people in the cars around me would be laughing at me. It was just, you just couldn't get away from it. And when you go through that level of ridicule, then one of two things happen. Either you go crazy, or you go away and hide, and it's over. Or you break through something. You break through that fear of what other people think of you, and how other people perceive you. And I wrote a book just after that called I Am Me, I Am Free, which was basically inspired by the fact that I went through this process of letting the mass ridicule serve me in a way. I didn't realize I was doing it at the time, but with hindsight I can see it, to release me from the prison that most people live in, which is the fear of what other people think. Now, in my journey up to this point, and again, we come back to what we were talking about right at the start with the reptilians, if I had not been through that process of mass ridicule and therefore cleansing this concern with what other people thought of me, there is no way in the world that I would ever go public about shape-shifting reptilians.
Yeah.
The number of people that have said to me, look, mate, I've seen it. I'll tell you what I've seen it, but don't mention my name. I can't take the stick I'll get if people know it's me. If someone's going to put these things out, for goodness sake, mate, if someone's going to talk about the moon not being real and all that stuff, along with reptilians and along with this is an illusory reality, then if you've got any vestiges of worrying about what people think of you and how they might ridicule you, laugh at you, dismiss you, then forget it. You ain't going to go there.
Yeah.
And this is why the personal journey of people doing this and the information that they are uncovering and pursuing and communicating are fundamentally connected. Because the person has to work on themselves to get to a point where they can put this information out. Because if they don't, then they're not going to put it out, and they're going to say, I'll go here, because people won't laugh at me here up to this point, but I ain't going there. And therefore, all this information, which people need to have access to so they can say, well, what do I think of it, would never get circulating. You know what? When I came across the reptilian stuff, I put reptilian ETs and variations of those words into a search engine, and I got a handful of pages. Put those words in now. Tens and tens and tens of thousands of them. That's because once it gets out and it starts circulating, then it's got a chance of having people look at it and think, well, it may sound crazy, but let's just look at it without preconceived idea. Do you know, this seems to make sense. A number of people have said to me, it makes sense to me. It shouldn't. I know it shouldn't, but it does when I look at it. But they wouldn't say that unless someone put it out there.
You spoke to one man and a dog and put your own seats out and walk around the towns putting posters out and around the local shops. And
the idea something like this would happen, it was just a joke, wasn't it? I mean, I kind of felt instinctively it was going to come. It's what kept me going. But at the time, it was like, dreamland.
Well, like you say, it's a big awakening when people are out there. A number of people that phone our office and say, we live in a fascist state. What is this? What can we do about it? Well, maybe after 6 or 7 hours, we'll all know.
But I take it all very seriously, and only a fool wouldn't.
He's a great man. It's like a pilgrimage, yeah?
See, everything he said 10 years ago, and that I thought, that's impossible, it's all come true. Well, he's got me convinced, and there's no turning back.
I was going to come out with all sorts of words like how I've known David for 35 years, and how he's given the last 15 to researching all that he writes and talks about. But to be quite honest with you, you've not come here to hear or see me, so there's no more to be said, and I would like to say welcome David Icke.